Alright class, welcome back. Today we're going to work on 4.1 percents and fractions. Our standard is 6th grade number since A, and our objective is that we're going to be able to write percents as fractions and fractions as percents. Our mathematical literacy, we have percent, fraction, and decimal. Okay, so for 4.1 percents and fractions, our success criteria is that by the end of this lesson, you will be able to draw models to represent fractions as percents. You will also be able to write percents as fractions. You will also be able to write equivalent fractions with denominators of 100. And lastly, you will also be able to write fractions as percents. Now, very importantly, let's talk about mathematical literacy. Now, what I mean by that is we're talking about vocabulary words. So one big one that we need to talk about is percent. Okay, so percent means per 100. Percents are ratios that can compare a quantity to 100. For an example, if we have 33%, we mean that we have 33 per 100, and that can be written as a fraction, 33 over 100, or as a decimal, 33 hundredths. Okay, so we have an example here, and this example is showing a percent as a fraction. So if we have 3%, that is going to be equivalent to 3 over 100. If we have 25%, that is going to be equivalent to 25 over 100. But when we reduce if we reduce by 25, 25 can go into 25 once, and 25 can go into 100 4 times. So this would be the reduced fraction. Okay. We also have an example of a fraction as a percent. So if we have 11 over 100, that is going to be equivalent to 11%. And same thing, if we have 1/5, the fraction 1/5, okay, and we multiply 1 times 20, we get 20. 20 times 5 equals 100, so 1/5 is equivalent to 20 over 100, and that is going to be as a fraction 20%. Okay. Now, let's talk about what a decimal number is. So a decimal number is often used to mean a number that uses a decimal point followed by digits that show a value that is smaller than 1. For an example, we have 45 and 6/10. So that is going to be equal to the 45 here. There's 4 tens. So 4 tens is 40. We have 5 ones. So that's just 5. And then we have 6/10. Okay, so if we add 40, 4 tens plus 5 ones plus 6/10, we're going to have the decimal 45 and 6/10. Okay. So that's what we mean by a decimal number. Now a fraction, okay, a fraction is represented by equal parts of a whole or a collection. So if we have one whole, think of like a pizza. You know, you go to Pizza Edge and you order a large pizza and you have one whole pizza. Now if you split that pizza in half, you have 2 halves of that one whole. But if you break that same pizza into 4 parts, you know, you can just keep breaking it down. You have 4 slices here, okay? And it keeps going down to like, you can break it down by eighths if you want. But ultimately, these are all equivalent because that pizza is the same size. We're just kind of taking that knife and, you know, making more slices here. But ultimately, the value of that pizza is still the same because we haven't taken any slices yet. Okay. Now this first problem that we're going to do, we're going to interpret models. So what interpret means is we want to understand. So interpreting means understanding. And models is a diagram. What I mean by that is we're talking about pictures. So we have this grid here, okay? It's a 10 by 10 grid. All right. So if we count all the columns, okay, all the columns are basically counting down. So basically we have 1 column, 2 columns, 3 columns, 4 columns, 5 columns, 6 columns, 7 columns, 8 columns, 9 columns, and 10 columns. So we have 10 columns, okay? From here all the way to here, we have 10 columns, all right? Now let's talk about how many rows we have. Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows. Okay, again, we have 10 rows. Okay, now this again is a 10 by 10 grid. Okay, so again, your x-axis, okay, your x-axis, your horizontal number line, okay, has 10 columns. Your y-axis, your vertical number line, again has 10 rows. Okay, so this is a 10 by 10 grid. We'll revisit this in a bit. But because we're working with a 10 by 10 grid, and we're going to interpret models, understand pictures, okay, let's just look at this. So a century is 100 years, okay? A cent, like a penny. A cent is 1/100th of a dollar. So if you think about it, how many pennies are in $1? Well, the equivalent value is going to be 100 pennies. So a cent means 100. Okay, so 100. So when we say and talk about per cents, what we mean is per 100. Okay, and the symbol for a percent is, this percent sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a percent, we're going to write a fraction, and we're going to write a ratio that is shown in this grid, in the diagram. Okay, so colored in green, we're going to count all those. Okay, again, this is a 10 by 10 grid. So if we count, we have a row of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay, we're going to write this as a percent. Or let's write it as a fraction first. We have 60 units per 100. So if we multiply 10 times 10, we're going to get 100. Okay, so 10 times 10 equals 100. So there are 100 units within this 10 by 10 grid, within this 10 by 10 diagram. Okay, so again, we wrote this, all the green areas shaded. There's 6 rows. So we have, and each row has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Each row has 10 units. So if we have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, 4 rows, 5 rows, and 6 rows, 6 times 10 is going to be 60. Okay, so this is going to be as a fraction. 60 is your numerator. There are 100 total units within this 10 by 10 grid. So that's your denominator. Okay, now we're going to write 60 over 100 as a percent. Okay, so 60 over 100 is going to be 60 per cent. Okay, remember, percent means per 100. All right, next we're going to write this as a ratio. As a ratio, again, you have 6 tens, 2, and which ones are blank? You have 1 row that's blank, 2 rows that is blank, 3 rows that is blank, and 4 rows that is blank. Okay, so our ratio is we have 6 shaded rows and we have 4 unshaded rows. So again, 60% is equivalent to 60 over 100, and that is equivalent to the ratio 6:4. All right, so again, this is us interpreting models, meaning that we're understanding pictures and reading pictures and pulling information off of it to make fractions, percents, and ratios. All right, next what we're going to do is we're going to write percents as fractions. One more time, we're going to write percents as fractions. So let's focus in on the first problem, okay? Now with this first problem, we have, we're going to write 35% as a fraction, and then we have to reduce it in simplest form, okay? So again, this is a 10 by 10 grid, okay? Because you have 10 rows, okay? You have 10 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns, okay? So what that means is we multiply 10 times 10, there is going to be 100 total units inside this 10 by 10 grid. So again, with that being said, since we're writing a percent into a fraction, then with this 10 by 10 grid, or in other words, we call it a flat, there is 100 total units. So all we have to do now is count how many are shaded. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 units. So we have 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. 35 total units that are shaded. Again, we're going to write this percent as a fraction, but we have to simplify it, okay? So we have to simplify it. So let's think to ourselves, if we have 35, how do we reduce 35? How do we reduce 35? Well, if we think about it, we're looking at equivalent ratios or equivalent fractions, okay? So again, we want to reduce this and think of a number that can go both into 35 and 100 evenly, okay? So the number that comes to mind is 5. So if we divide 35 divided by 5 and 100 divided by 5, 100 divided by 5 is going to be 20, and 35 divided by 5 is 7, okay? So we can say that 35% is going to be equivalent to 7/20. So we, my friends, just wrote a fraction. Okay, we wrote a percent into a fraction. Okay, so again, we're using a model here. We're using a diagram. We're reading a picture. Okay, again, let's move on to the next problem. So this time we have again a 10 by 10 grid. Okay, and we got to look at all the units that are shaded. So we're going to write 100% as a fraction, and then we have to reduce it into simplest forms. So let's see here. So we have 100%. Okay, so we have 100%. Now there are a total of 100 units. Oops, let me zoom out a bit. There are a total of 100 units in this 10 by 10 grid. Okay, there are all 100 is shaded, and if we think about it, 100 divided by 100 will be one whole. Okay, so the whole thing is shaded. All right, so there we go. So we're going to say 100% is going to be equivalent to one whole. Okay, so even if we do it like 1 over 1, if we divide 1 over 1, 1 can go into 1 one time. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 take away 1 is 0. But your quotient is still one whole. Okay? All right. But if we kind of zoom out, now we know this stuff, but what if we were to add them together? These two diagrams, these two models. So if we have 100 total units shaded here, and we have 35 total units shaded there, well then, my friends, this is going to equal, we have, let's see here, 35 over 100 plus 1 over 100. 35 plus 100 is going to be 135 over 100. Now again, this is going to be an improper fraction because we know that, let me just break this down and show you guys. I'm going to do division here. So 135 goes inside, 100 goes outside. So 135 is your numerator, which is also your dividend. Your denominator is 100, that's also your divisor. 100 can go into 135 evenly without going over one time. 1 times 100 is 100. 35 take 135 take away 100 is 35. So this is one whole. This is going to equal one whole and 35 over 100. And then again, you can reduce that by 5. This is going to be 7 over 20. So your final answer is going to be 1 and 7 over 20 if we were to combine both of these diagrams, both of these 10 by 10 grids. Okay, so again, that is how we write percents as fractions. So I showed you 3 different examples. The first one we solve by itself. Okay, just this model. The second time we solve just this model, and the third example we combined both of them. Okay, let's move on. All right, so for this example, what we're going to do is we're going to write fractions as percents. Okay, so we're going to write 3 over 50 or 3/50ths as a percent. Okay, so we're going to go from a fraction to a percent. Now, since we have 3 over 50, now remember, percent means per 100. So we have to think about this as 3 over 50. So we got to make the denominator 100. We do that by multiplying by 2. You do that to both top and bottom. Okay. Now what that means is 3 times 2, your numerators, is going to be 6. 50 times 2 is going to be 100. I'm sorry. Remember, percent means per 100, meaning that we have to have the denominator for this fraction to be 100. Now 6 over 100 is going to be 6%. Okay, there we go. So we just wrote a fraction into a percent. Okay, so 3 over 50 is going to be equivalent. 3 over 50 is going to be equivalent to 6%. And that, my friends, is the final answer. But just so you know, remember that per, the word per, means to divide. Okay, so we're dividing when we hear the word per. Okay, now the numerator, this is going to be a part. The denominator should be, if we multiply this by 2, that should be 100. Okay, basically one whole. Okay, again, this fraction right here, again, this is another part. Okay, so again, that's what we mean by writing fractions as percents, or percents as fractions, or even going as far as writing a decimal as a percent, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's do one more example here. This time we're gonna write, let me zoom in on this one, we're gonna write 9 over 1,000 as a percent. Remember, percent means that we have to have the denominator has to be 100. So if we rewrite this problem, 9 over 1,000, or 9 thousandths, we want to make sure that this becomes 100. So if we have this here, how do we make sure that that 1,000 becomes 100? Well, my friends, all we do is divide by 10. Okay, so we're going to divide this by 10. Divide that by 10. Okay, so this is going to equal now 1,000 divided by 10 is going to be 100, and 9 divided by 10 is going to be, and this should be 0.9%. Okay, So in other words, because we divided 1,000 divided by 10, that's going to equal 100. All right. And then we're going to divide the numerator and denominator by 10. So we're going to write the numerator with a percent symbol. All right. So there we go. Again, please ask questions if you guys have questions. I really strongly encourage that you guys ask questions, especially if you don't understand. And this is what I'm here for. Please let me know, and I'm more than happy to help you guys out. All right? All right, students, so that concludes our lesson with 4.1% in fractions. Again, our success criteria. By now, you should be able to draw models to represent fractions as percents, and also to write percents as fractions and write equivalent fractions with denominators of 100. And lastly, you should be able to write fractions as percents. All right, so let's go ahead and get your graph paper ready, your pencils. We're going to do some problems from the actual 4.1 assignment. So please be ready. Let's go ahead and begin.